Acciona's tribute to the pioneers who try to make this world a better place. Challenges, adventure, risks, commitment, courage. The Acciona wind-powered Antarctic expedition enters the harshest and most hostile region on the planet to test one of the most innovative vehicles ever. A sled drawn by kites that races across the ice.
Course we're at 290.
The real challenge lies in covering the 2,175 miles across the Antarctic and being the first to arrive at the South Pole in a vehicle driven only by the wind, without emitting a single particle of pollution.
And what course?
We have to head for 171 and we're going towards 196.
A pioneer Spanish initiative in the history of polar exploration that will become a landmark as regards the future. The expedition also has a scientific goal: to extract ice and air samples from inside the continent to better understand the phenomenon of climate change. Wind travelers. Acciona's wind-powered Antarctic Challenge. The Antarctic is considered a patrimony of humanity. It is the most virgin and most protected of the continents, the least polluted territory on our planet. This remote corner of the Earth is of great scientific value. Scientists consider the Antarctic to be the best natural laboratory to study key factors to the future of the planet, global warming and the melting of the poles. In the interior of the Antarctic plateau, there is still much to be investigated, but the only way to get there is by land, using caterpillar vehicles, which are both expensive and polluting. If the scientific community wants to continue investigating and at the same time preserve the Antarctic, it is of the utmost importance that we develop a new kind of vehicle that does not pollute, a sustainable alternative. The departure point for this expedition is Cape Town. Its leader is veteran explorer Ramon Larramendi, and he will be accompanied by an Acciona expert in renewable energies, a scientist from the Higher Council of Scientific Investigations, and a photographer. The four of them will have to live in isolation together for almost 35 days and in extreme conditions. Ramon Larramendi oversees every last detail of the preparations. He has more than 20 years' experience and knows that any small oversight can have severe consequences once on the Antarctic. The expedition speaks with the Russian airline Alsi to determine the precise coordinates of where the plane is going to leave.
It was 81, 82, 88. 3 miles in, we set down the equipment in a clearly marked area. We cover the last 3 miles with our sled.
During the crossing, they will have no external logistical support. They will have to fend for themselves in the middle of the Antarctic.
Yeah, so if anything happens to you, there's no responsibility.
Telling that when you are in Antarctica, you're responsible for yourself.
Yes, that's clear. The responsibility falls on you, and you can obviously feel that extra weight, right? But anyway, I believe that in life you have to dare to do things, no? And you have to risk failure as well. It's important to believe. Fear should never condition you, right?
An old cargo plane will carry them to the Russian base of Novolazarevskaya. In 6 hours, they will be stepping down onto the White Continent to penetrate the most inaccessible region of this planet.
Ever since I was a kid, I really felt attracted to the polar regions. It's some sort of mysterious thing. And that comes from a book that I found on the shelves at home. What it suggested to me, what it helped me to dream about, to imagine. And that's where my fascination started. And then I started to read more books, got even more interested, and started feeling a real passion about the polar regions. And that hasn't stopped yet, and I'm 46.
When they reach the base, a storm is about to touch down. The forecast makes them change their plans. They run the risk of being locked in for days without being able to move. So as not to lose any time, they leave in a hurry.
It's perfectly possible that there'll be too many sastrugis to be able to land. I think the best will be if we start studying landing spots as soon as we cross the channel.
1, 2, 3.
This is all our baggage. We have near a ton of cargo that they've managed to load in this special way. The runners are tied down here, and the equipment's been placed on one side. So let's go and see the pilot, and our adventure begins.
The expedition is traveling in December. It's summer in the Antarctic, and the temperatures are more bearable. During this time of the year, the sun never sets. They will never see the night while they're there. They won't see anyone on their trek either, because the Antarctic plateau, at an average height of 9,800 feet above sea level, is a huge uninhabited expanse. The extreme conditions do not allow anyone to live there.
When we arrived, well, that was when we realized that this expedition was serious business, and there was no going back. I mean, once the plane takes off again, and there's no one else, you see your fellow travelers, and you see all the bulks there. You undergo a 90-degree temperature change in 10 hours. You go from 82 degrees Fahrenheit to minus 19.3 Fahrenheit. And that's an important thermal and psychological shock.
You can't compare it with anything else. An extension like this, a magnitude like this, 5.5 million square miles with no original human life, just an enormous extension of ice and desolation. The landscape is really desolate. Everything is absolutely white and the temperatures are extreme, minus 40 to 60 degrees Fahrenheit, and even reaching 110 to 130 below. Windswept. It's something else. It's probably the closest thing to the surface of Mars or Saturn.
1,200 ropes, 140 cross pieces, and 750 handmade knots make up this peculiar vehicle. Adjusting the draw system, connecting the locomotive, and sewing the cross pieces to the runners are some of the tasks that lay ahead to mount the sled. It has a low-cost manufacturing price and is designed by Ramon Larramendi.
Ramon, it's cold out, isn't it?
Yep, it's a bit cold. It's not the most comfortable thing in the world to be here tying knots. There were many knots to be made. It's close to 800 knots. And sure, it has to be done. And if it's cold, well, it's complicated. And then add on that we had just arrived from Cape Town, and it was a shock. Just 10 hours earlier, we were eating supper at the restaurant at the airport, right? So it was like a very radical plunge.
The expedition encounters more hardships than it had anticipated. A sudden storm prevents them from finishing mounting the sled, and they are forced to take refuge in the tent. Exactly 100 years ago, Norwegian explorer Roald Amundsen and English captain Robert Falcon Scott were contending to see who conquered the South Pole. The fight to be the first to reach the remotest place on Earth fostered a strong rivalry between them. Amundsen's first goal was to conquer the North Pole, but another explorer, the American Robert Peary, beat him to it. Amundsen then decided to assault the South Pole, surprising everyone. There he met up with Scott, who unexpectedly found himself embroiled in an agonizing race towards the South Pole. The hardships they encounter and their manner of facing adversity made them the protagonists of one of the greatest epic ordeals in history.
Try to imagine those guys 100 years ago. It's way out. When you imagine the conditions those people were fighting and the risks they were ready to take on, it makes your hair stand on end, and well, you come out in goosebumps all over.
This expedition also faces adverse conditions. The winds blow at over 90 miles an hour, and the temperatures drop to minus 30 degrees Fahrenheit. The durability of the tent is at risk. With a height of 6.5 feet, it might not withstand the gusting wind.
That's when you say to yourself, okay, we're here because this place is letting us be here. It's doing us a favor and we're in luck as well. But tomorrow we may not be so lucky. It's all up to the Antarctica, and if it wants us to be here or not. We're not in control of the situation, and we never will be.
The environmental pressure is tremendous. There you are, huddled in a tent, and there's a thin layer of cloth separating you from the hell outside. The wind blowing so hard that you can't see anything 2 feet in front of you, blowing snow into everything, into every little corner. Human survival is at its limit out there. We were all fully dressed inside that tent, waiting for it to rip open at any moment.
What will we do if the tent rips, Ramon?
Bury ourselves under the locomotive. That's the only solution.
You feel really protected by your fellow travelers. That's a link that gives you absolute strength.
The storm has blocked their path for 5 days. The systems crash, and they lose all communication with the outside world.
There's a protocol in the Antarctica. If there's no contact in 48 hours, they automatically get a rescue operation going. Because, of course, you can't know if something's just broken or if everybody's already half dead. We couldn't contact the base, and time was passing. And that's automatic. That's the way it is. I mean, they set it in motion with enormous costs, and that's, well, that could be the end. A very expensive end to the expedition. Wait's all we can do.
The tent manages to withstand the storm, but the blizzard has buried their vehicle. After cleaning all the snow off and making sure they haven't lost anything, they finish mounting the sled.
1, 2...
The first order of business now is to recoup lost time and test the catamaran.
Looks good.
There are times because here we are, but it was almost closer than...
Perfect. Let's go. Let's go. Taut. Hold it taut. Tense it. Tense it as hard as you can. Wait. Loosen up. Let it go. Let it go. Help me pull on this handle. Help me pull.
The expedition hopes to cover more than 2,175 miles in one of the most hostile areas in the world with this sled. Their goal? To be the first expedition in history to reach the South Pole with a wind-powered vehicle. Ramon's invention, designed specifically to sail over ice, will be their home and means of transport for the next month.
It looks odd. Some pieces of wood tied with ropes, with a tent on top, and a kite pulling it all. But all that turns into an efficient sailboat as regards an ice surface. No one had ever sailed over an ice surface before, Of the classic explorers, Nansen tried to sail with a tent and even managed to move a mile or so. He was the closest to this idea. Other explorers tried to use a lateen sail. The idea of sailing over ice is a recurrent one, but it's really the consolidation of having solved a small polar enigma. The idea of the sled is based on my experience during 3 years between 1990 and 1993. I made a long journey from Greenland to Alaska, covering more than 8,700 miles in a dog sled. I met a lot of Inuit hunters. I built a lot of sleds. I saw them make a lot of sleds. That's where I really learned what sleds are like, how sleds behave in really extreme conditions, in impossible places. The idea came to me when I was thinking, and I said to myself, there has to be some way to combine the Inuit concept, which has been used but pulled by dogs, with the traction force of a kite, which was also being used in other places. It was sort of evident that if you connected those two concepts, you could create a boat, right?
Ramon Larramendi first tried to execute his idea of the polar catamaran in 2005. He covered 2,800 miles of the inland Antarctic with it. The expedition ended with the vehicle completely destroyed. Now, 6 years later, with a greatly improved prototype, Ramon returns to face the ice and prove that his invention is trustworthy and safe. For this type of sailboat to sail, it's enough for the wind to blow at over 3.5 miles per hour. That's barely a breeze. The wind is the true protagonist of this journey, the motor of the sled, its fuel. It propels it and gives it the strength it needs to move.
It's hard to imagine the gigantic power of the wind when it's harnessed by a kite. It's incredibly impressive. It can move tons. We have infinite power. We managed to reach 30 miles an hour, and the real question is it safe to sail at that speed? Well, it's not. 30 miles an hour is dangerous, and then you have to take into account the surface. If the surface of the ice is hard, the vehicle jumps all over the place, so it's not safe. If the snow is soft, then you can go at 30 miles an hour. Then there's no problem, because the snow acts like a shock absorber. The speed that we try to maintain as normal is 6 miles an hour.
12 kites ranging in size from 53 square feet to 882 square feet allow them to regulate the speed according to the wind force. They are controlled by a system consisting of pulleys and 4 lines of different lengths. With the longest line, the kite can fly as high as 984 feet above the ground. Any of these kites is capable of dragging more than a ton of weight.
Without pulling on the kite, same thing. You have to get the hang of these maneuvers to go really fast. Because if not, the most difficult operation is getting the kite up. That's the tricky part. It's complicated, the most delicate part. The kite has to rise and it has to be perfect first time. It's all the different forces. Sometimes a line can get caught in a block of ice. Everything has to be carefully studied to get the kite up. It's an important moment. We have to see if this 269-foot kite works well. It's the first time we're testing such a large kite. There it is. Nah, it's not flying well. It's not flying well. The kite's not flying well.
The 269-foot kite finally did get up there, even though at the beginning it didn't look like it was going to make it. It flew up and we did a lot of miles with it. It was a key factor in this expedition.
We're moving in, that's what counts. With that kite, we can sail with laughable winds. I mean, with just a light breeze in the face. It seems impossible that could move anything, but you can't use it when the wind is really blowing. That would be madness. You would be catapulted forward. The power is impressive, isn't it?
If on the outside, it is the wind that drives the vehicle, on the inside, it is the sun that furnishes energy. Solar panels provide electricity to feed the communication system and the GPS.
These are solar panels that have been chosen because they adapt perfectly to the specifications of the tent that's on the sled. We have 3 panels. In this case, 2 30-watt panels and 1 40-watt panel, making a total of 100 watts. They have a special durability because they have to take a beating. And sometimes we're sailing, other times we're resting. There's not always sun. We store the energy in small 50-watt batteries. These batteries are made out of lithium polymers, and we use them to store energy for those days we don't have direct radiation. Another use of solar energy within this prototype is the use of transparent plastic windows in the tent. Those windows allow us to create a greenhouse effect inside the tent, and it has greatly improved the comfort of the travelers compared to previous prototypes.
This greenhouse effect makes it possible for there to be more than 30 degrees Fahrenheit difference in temperature between the inside and the outside. This is how the expedition manages to survive in such a wild terrain as the Antarctic, by making use of wind power and solar energy. Up until now, the only way to get here was by using caterpillar vehicles. Vehicles that, besides being extremely contaminating, need significant logistical support. They consume over 2.5 gallons of diesel per mile.
Why should we bring other energies from other places if we have energy sources here? That's the philosophy behind our project. Of course, depending on nature is always, well, it implies a great deal of uncertainties, things we cannot control. But then that's the name of the game, so how do you win? The key is in adapting to them.
In this project, innovation and science walk hand in hand. This revolutionary means of transport affords the possibility of conducting scientific research in the most inaccessible parts of the Antarctic plateau. It is a genuine mobile laboratory. And thanks to its nature, it does not pollute. They can measure the quality of the atmosphere's air on the go. With just one vehicle of these characteristics, we can know if the planet's pollution has reached the inland Antarctic.
I'd say that this vehicle is ideal for this kind of experiment. There are no others if they want to take samples in those areas.
In the Antarctic, there are pieces of ice that have remained frozen for the last 13 million years.
I'm going down into the hole to get the samples.
Juan Pablo Albar, the expedition scientist, is taking samples from the ice to study how climate change is affecting the melting of the poles. And also to figure out if there was ever life on the plateau.
These are historic expeditions. There are not that many chances to be on an expedition like this one. I believe the singularity of this expedition was one of the things that really appealed to me, that made me want to join it, that's for sure. One thing is what you imagine, and another is how you adapt, how you adjust, especially with these temperatures. And well, it was like a shock, a survival shock. So you just get used to it, little by little. Okay, this stage is completed.
Seeing a scientist in a completely different world, that was very interesting. To have a chance to live with somebody completely different from your other colleagues.
The cooperation between the group was there from the very first moment, from tying the knots to setting up the sled to collaborating on navigation techniques. You go over to the kite, you lift the kite and the vehicle starts up, and you have to guess, well, you see it right away, no? You see the trajectory of the vehicle and you have to run up and jump in while it's on the move. The truth is that, especially the first few times, even if it's only going at 6 or 12 miles per hour, you really have to believe and then calculate the right angle. And sometimes, well, at the beginning, they had to bring the kite down and wait for me because I hadn't been able to jump in. But then you become a specialist in jumping on. From the first moment, both Javi and me, well, we had no clue as to kite navigation. And we started learning right away, in the field, learning how to guide the kites, and we had to participate in all the navigation process.
Just imagine a photographer with a tripod, the camera and a mic, running over the Antarctic plateau, trying to jump on a gadget that is going around 12 miles an hour. From the time you get off the plane until it comes back to pick you up, you're stuck in a freezer in which all the horizons are flat and everything that surrounds you is white. Ramon, here we are, filming non-stop. Always filming. The first order of business was to find something that could give me high shots or very low shots. I really thought a lot about how in such a flat area, such a white area, I could get images that were different. It's a challenge for any photographer.
Let's go! Shall we get it going? Let's hit it! Careful, don't want the camera to fall off the sled. Let's hit it! These are the sharks, our friends. They look so soft, but they're as hard as stone.
These are called sastrugis, snow surfaces formed by the erosion of the wind that are basically blocks of ice. Hard, cold, and white, they break the flatness of an apparently serene landscape. Stones in their path, they are the great enemy of any Antarctic expedition.
Sometimes the density of sastrugis is tremendous. It's just madness. Other times they're just dotted around here and there. But you have to keep your eyes peeled, because crashing into a wall of ice that can reach a height of up to 5 feet can bring you to a stop. Because if you don't stop, they can destroy everything. That's why you have to stay alert, go around them. It's not easy, or go over them very carefully.
Wait, this one deserves a picture. Have you seen the catamaran, guys? What a photo op. Even you won't believe this. Come on out when you want, if you can.
This is nothing for this catamaran. It's really adapting to the terrain, and it goes over places that when you're sailing, you think, no way we can make it over that. No way. We're going to break up into little pieces. And yet, up it goes and then down again. It's impressive.
While sailing, they have a breakdown. One of the runners breaks.
The fact is, the terrain's going to be tough, I'm sure of that. The terrain is horrible.
But that will be hanging if we don't put any weight on it.
Yeah, sure, the key is not adding any weight to it, so it doesn't affect it.
The Teflon is holding it, right?
Thanks to the vehicle's simple design, they can easily repair it. On the go, and without needing to ask for outside help. This simple design is based on traditional techniques that Inuit hunters use. Techniques Ramon learned on his journey in the Arctic.
The priority of Eskimo life is to make things easier and simplified to the maximum in everything. Everything should be versatile and reparable. You have to be able to depend on yourself in any situation. You cannot depend on help from anyone, no matter what happens. Europeans were always burdened with prejudices, believing that all Eskimo concepts were primitive and that they couldn't work. Many of the deaths and tragedies in the history of polar exploration were due to believing that our concepts, our civilization, had to be far superior. They were savages, right? And then the first explorers started to succeed. Robert Peary, Amundsen, they admitted that the Eskimo way was superior. Others kept their prejudices, Scott and some others, and some succeeded and others failed.
Captain Scott has always been reproached for his lack of preparation. Influenced by Western prejudice, he underestimated the Inuits' experience and betted on using horses, which cannot support the low temperatures, as a means of transport, and on mechanized vehicles that froze over. Both decisions turned out to be fatal. The Englishmen had no choice but to drag the sled themselves. Amundsen, however, spent months with the Eskimo peoples. He discovered the 1,000-year-old Inuit experience, their survival techniques, their feeding habits, their ways of adapting to the cold, and he learned how to direct a sled pulled by dogs.
Amundsen's open-minded vision of reality, his rational viewpoint, and his lack of prejudices of any kind, I think that's applicable to everything. Many of the concepts and the keys to Amundsen's successes are still the keys to modern expeditions.
100 years later, Amundsen's ideas are still in effect. The application of traditional methods and the ability to adapt to the environment.
I clearly identify with Amundsen, as well as with his type of leadership, which was very horizontal, while Scott was a very vertical expedition leader. One of Amundsen's virtues was that, at the hardest times, he was capable of listening to suggestions from other members of the expedition. Obviously, I identify with that spirit. When we're out there, we're all equals, and everyone has to contribute. And actually, it's usually others who contribute the best ideas, not oneself, right?
Ramon is a person who takes really good care of the team, of our frame of mind. He makes sure you're in shape physically, that you're happy, that you eat right. And all that makes you feel safe and taken care of when you're in a place like this. That makes him a great leader. What's for supper tonight, Ramon?
That depends what the guests want. We chefs adapt to the guests we have. We do not impose our own tastes.
Their diet basically consists of freeze-dried energetic products like rice and pasta. To help the body generate warmth, it's also rich in fats.
We eat a lot of butter. We have a container full of tubs of butter, and we eat it at all times of the day. If you eat a cookie, it's with butter. If you eat bread, it's with butter. We even eat it in spoonfuls. Butter is a part of everything here. Anything that we cook, we add in spoonfuls of butter.
The fondue. Yes, hello?
They are constantly sailing. They work in shifts of 10 hours and by pairs. The 4 leftover hours that they are not in movement, they spend together. During their rest periods, they use their time to read or sleep. If they want to do so peacefully, it's essential to get as much cushioning as possible, because while they sleep, they are still in movement.
As long as the catamaran is not traveling over a very rough surface, it has a sort of swing movement that sort of rocks you. It's a rhythmic and serene movement that lulls you to sleep. As I said, it's almost like feeling like you're in a crib.
Our first toast.
For us, inside this reduced world, with so little space, so few people, and very few things, well, it was a fun and nice moment.
Merry Christmas on the Antarctic plateau. Merry wind power. The cameraman's working.
Well, there we were, and we got out some things that reminded us of Christmas, like sharing a small bottle of cava. That's like less than half a pint between 4 of us. Merry Christmas!
Merry Christmas. Okay, but let's have a little more music and merriness. Come on.
If you let yourself go as regards your feelings and that stuff, well, then you could go into a downward spiral of longing, and then you could be in trouble.
It's very complicated. It's a very long time in a very small tent if there's no affection between people. Anyone who has a family with several brothers and sisters knows exactly what this is like, all squished into one room, right? The fights and all that stuff.
We're in very intimate contact, and it's really easy to rub someone up the wrong way. And we're very aware that it's not like on a mountain, because on a mountain there are always ways to walk away, escape valves, if you want to call them that.
The primary cause of any expedition's failure is the team. If the team is not a unit, if there are squabbles, of course it's a very fragile house of cards and it can come crashing down at the first sign of trouble. If there's a storm, why did you have to do that? If there's a fight, it just comes crashing down. When you're picking the members of a team, the first thing to consider is attitude.
We're not just taking a casual stroll through the middle of Antarctica. We left from one place, we have to reach another, and we have no other choice. And that's what makes you keep going and going and going. It's very motivating to realize you can take it in such a homogeneous and harsh environment.
The landscape of the Antarctic plateau is desolate. It is an endless white desert, an infinite plain that does not allow you to distinguish the horizon. Sometimes, but just occasionally, you can make out the curve of the globe. There's nothing, no one, no noises.
It is the last region on Earth still untouched by man's hand. A completely wild environment. It's like sailing, that same sensation of freedom, the sensation of nothingness, of being in the middle of nothing. And that's a sensation that can really get you and become truly unbearable. For me, it's the opposite. I feel like I'm right at home.
This place that seems so inhospitable to some, that is so untouched, it gives me a certain sense of comfort. I'm not going to say it's like spending the day at the beach, but it does afford me peace.
It's a landscape that devours you, that absorbs you. It's like it steals your physical and mental energy. And the truth is that when you're plunk in the middle of the Antarctica plateau, you really do want to get out of there. And then afterwards, you want to go back.
Talk to me. Tell me, what are you doing right now?
I've gone to get milk on my way back from the dairy farm.
Yeah.
I went over there to the mountains. There are fields with cows grazing. I went to see the dairyman.
Gentlemen, this is a case of Antarctic dementia.
They have covered more than 1,240 miles. They have been on board the sled for 18 days. They are very close to the geographical South Pole, to the point where all the meridians converge.
The South Pole has to be there, right over there, where it's all grey and dark, right? What course? Where?
We have to go towards 171 and we're going towards 196.
Let's go towards the left. The South Pole is right there and we can't see a thing.
Harder, Ramon. Harder, Ramon. Hit it harder. You're a champion. Minus 176 degrees. I can see the base.
We can see the base. We can see the base. Everything was clouded over. It was a very grey day, an ugly day. And then suddenly it opened up and we could see the base in the distance. It was like arriving on another planet. Arriving at the South Pole is always an exciting moment because the pole is a symbol. It's a point in the middle of nothing, the same nothing that you've been seeing for 1,100 miles, except for that sign that reads South Pole. There is absolutely no difference. It's what the South Pole means that counts.
The South Pole is inside you. You reach a place you've been dreaming of for years, and in this case our expedition had been pursuing it for 1,550 miles, right? And we arrived after 310 miles without stopping, and it was really exciting.
Suddenly, we felt like we were conquering something.
It's not easy to enter with a vehicle, but we managed to maneuver our way through the central passageway and reach the ceremonial pole. And that's the most emblematic place on all the South Pole. Then, sure, it was like a movie. We not only attained our goal, but we did it in a beautiful way on such a wonderful day. After so many miles, we made it all the way in.
The South Pole! 1,400 miles, 19 days.
A picture for history on the centennial of the conquest of the South Pole. On December the 14th, 1911, Roald Amundsen became the first person to set foot on the southernmost point on Earth. To record his feat, he had this picture taken of him. 34 days later, Englishman Robert Falcon Scott arrived. Defeated, with a gesture of heroic honesty, he posed in front of his opponent's flag.
They pose in front of their adversary's trophy, and there was a tremendous rivalry between them. But looking straight at the camera, they have their picture taken, as if they were testifying to the fact that they were second.
Scott and his 4 companions, completely demoralized, started the long trek back. More than 800 miles lay ahead of them. Their tragic destiny would make them heroes. Evans died of exhaustion. Captain Oates, wounded in one foot, committed suicide so as not to be a burden on the rest of the expedition. Scott and the other 2 members of the team died, frozen and exhausted.
The great values of exploration are in those expeditions. Courage when faced with difficulties, no surrender when faced with problems, believing in what you set out to do, to keep going even when it seems impossible.
In this same place where Scott and Amundsen arrived 100 years ago, there is nothing. Just a huge American scientific base bearing the names of these 2 explorers, and it was built in 1956. It is permanently inhabited, and in summer, it houses up to 200 people.
A tennis court like this is just crazy.
It also houses a basketball court, a gymnasium, rooms for all type of leisure activities, a huge library.
A guide to Thailand.
And objects that you would never imagine you would find at the South Pole.
The sensation that you have after so many days living in a 10 by 10 foot space and then arriving at a place where you're received by people in t-shirts because inside they're at 72 degrees and you see women who you haven't seen in 30 days and whatnot. I mean, you see normality, right? So you say to yourself, so this is the world, right? But at the South Pole.
The Antarctic is the most protected place in the world. Whoever goes there may not leave a trail behind. Despite this extreme safeguard, the continent belongs to no one. It is governed by a treaty that administrates international relations, and it was signed in 1959 by 12 countries. Most of these nations have scientific research stations, but commercial exploitation of this territory is strictly forbidden.
Let's see how the sled is doing after 1,250 miles. Here's where it broke, where we did the emergency repair, and that has held for almost 500 miles. It doesn't look too good, but we'll just make a small repair, and I think it'll hold for the miles we have left. It's pretty solid. And the rest is still perfect, like it hadn't covered a single mile.
Oh yeah, but you didn't need any fuel. Oh. Yeah, that is awesome. It's incredible.
The people there were absolutely astonished because it was the first time that something like this appeared there. The people we saw and talked with on the base, it grabbed their attention. One of the things they asked me was why no one had thought about it before, if it's really that simple. And then how did some Spaniards come up with the idea? Because, of course, if you're on the Costa del Sol, you're not going to be thinking about crossing the Antarctic, right? This is life at the South Pole. We saw a dark stain in the distance, a Spaniard who was just arriving at the geographical South Pole. And we had a meeting in Dr. Livingstone's style. Albert Larramendi, who we met up there, and it was great. He was the only person that we saw on the surface of the ice during all the days of the crossing. 4, 5, 6 miles an hour. For a bit windier, we'd make really nice time.
The expedition still has 745 miles ahead to reach its final destination, the region of Patriot Hills. Ramon Larramendi wants to make sure the vehicle is durable and trustworthy, capable of reaching the most inaccessible places on the continent.
Let's have a small bottle.
Okay, sure. But just a few drops, please.
You have to drive, Ramon.
Let somebody else drive.
As long as you don't drive off the track.
Let someone else drive. I'm going to be hungover.
What are we celebrating anyway? What are we celebrating?
We're celebrating the halfway point. We only have 310 miles ahead of us. Half of the last stage. 5, 6 parts. The end is in sight, but you can't shout victory until you get there.
The Acciona wind-powered Antarctic expedition has achieved its goal. It has covered more than 2,175 miles with no need for fuel. Any Caterpillar vehicle would have used almost 5,300 gallons of diesel fuel. The Acciona wind-powered Antarctic vehicle is going to revolutionize research in the polar regions. It is shaping up to be the ideal solution for supplying and transporting to and from the scientific bases on the continent. It is a safe, cheap, and non-polluting vehicle. It is an invention that allows us to look into the future.
The idea behind the project is to continue working so that it can be a real usable vehicle, particularly for scientific expeditions. 80 degrees, 27 minutes south, 79 degrees west, 55 minutes. We're at Patriot Hills. We made it!
An experience like this changes you. Of course it does. It has to, because it's an interior experience and you can't hide from yourself. I mean, I feel like I've accomplished a great feat.
When you go to the Antarctic, you leave your life behind. Imagine the time you have for thinking during 34 days as you sit on top of your life, looking down, right? In the end, you get perspective on a lot of things, on things you don't even realize when you're caught up in the maelstrom of life.
What I bring back is strength above all else. Knowing that you've tested yourself, that you've taken the risk and proved your mettle. That, yes, we can do it. Because lots of times we're just sitting around saying, I can't do this, I can't do that.
It is essential to believe in oneself, to see it clearly no matter what anyone else thinks. Of course, you have to think things through and do the best you can to keep things moving forward. You can't let fear get a grip on you. What I mean is that you always have to take that leap.